Hi, this is Nerds. In this episode, Dad and Dan welcome their very first guest nerd, Adrianna Prosser. She knows all sorts of nerd stuff. She even had a nerdy dad, just like me, and he taught her about video games, Star Trek. Heck, he even invented a board game and made her a character in it. And she's like a living encyclopedia of the Marvel Universe. And she's a real archer! But mostly she's a super nice person who teaches other people what her dad taught her. To love what you love and not to be ashamed of who you are. Welcome back to Nerds.
Here we are, Dan, we already episode 2 of the Nerds podcast. Woo. This is exciting stuff. Today we are lucky enough to welcome our very first guest expert, Adrianna Prosser.
Hello.
This podcast is all about nerds, why we're nerds, what made us nerds, and can you talk a little bit about what it is for you to be considered a nerd?
I am what's called a mudblood. I am a half-breed geek nerd because to me, geek and nerd can be used at different times, but also interchangeable. We can talk about that too.
Sure.
But my dad is a huge nerd, like purebred, like leet speak, binary code, had the first Atari that ever was sold in Ontario/Canada. I watched Star Trek TNG from his knee when I was still like learning how to form words. We would geek together and play board games and just really nerd was our language. Like that was my love language with my dad.
Yeah.
And then my mom, you know, she is a muggle, but she's a muggle that can appreciate fun and games. So like growing up with Disney, and I had a Roger Rabbit doll on my 5th birthday. So that kind of like supporting my imagination definitely came from my muggle mother, even though she didn't understand why sci-fi was so interesting to me and my father. As I sit in front of the Back to the Future 35th anniversary poster that I have, because
as you sit in front of such an incredibly impressive little nerd corner.
This is just one corner of many. And so
I've been to your apartment. It's unbelievable. You talk about bat caves. Batman ain't got nothing on her.
Except like Batcave is like all black and gray and like midnight black and off black. But like everything here is neon because I grew up with video games and comic books. So I love vibrant colors. There's Fraggles that are falling from the ceiling, and comic books. And it's just, I love all of that. I think tapping into that saying that not only did I form a love language with my father, but it became my love language. Like it became a way of expression and a way to experience joy was through all of this geekiness. And that's why I love Nerds, because you are my people. You're inclusive, you're passionate and compassionate and empathetic to understand that your geek lens is not the same as my geek lens. So maybe we should share them both because they're both valid.
Right.
And it's been a joy. It's been a joy to hang out with all of these nerds that you've kind of picked from around the universe to be like, oh, hey, you're really cool and super chill and love things in a genuine, nice way. If there a better way to put that.
That
right?
was such a huge prerequisite. I mean, I said in the first episode that this all started from like one night. I was just so fed up with people's vitriol towards something that's just supposed to bring us pure joy.
Yes.
So I want to back up a little bit because that was an amazing introduction to you and your nerdiness. But I'm going to rewind a little bit and see if we can unpack some of that. And Dan, jump in there if you want to unpack some of what Adrianna just said. The first thing is your dad. You mentioned that your dad had the first Atari in what?
In like maybe all of Canada. So back in the day, in the 70s, like late 70s, early 80s, there were no EB Games. There was no Geek Store, GameStop, any of those things. You would go to the CNE, you would go to the Canadian National Exhibition, you would go to the X, and you would go to the Tech Building and the Future Building. And they had these Ataris for sale.
Because comic book stores didn't do video games yet?
No, they
They were
were
exclusively comic books.
exclusively comic books.
Okay.
Yeah, like now you can get figurines and it's like kind of like a hobby shop, but they didn't do that before. They were they were very much, I am selling just paper goods, which, just to do a shout out to one of the fantastic institutions of Toronto that we have lost, is Dragon Lady Comics with Joe Kilmartin, who was my comic book guy and actually brought me back into being an out of the nerd console closet, and unabashedly geeky, because I just felt like I couldn't really wear my geek on my sleeve, which is a really strange thing to say in front of like my wall of nerddom.
It's a big sleeve, like you're yeah.
Right, like it's a very long nerdy sleeve, but that it took people to really show me that there were pockets of good still in Toronto. But back in the 70s and 80s, like it was quite niche, and it was very much like nerd, and Attack of the Nerds was a theme, like that othering was still quite popular, unlike today. I think we've talked numerous times about how it's actually kind of chic and dare I say, like, cool to be a nerd now.
Yeah. I think it's cool to be happy.
Yeah. I would like that to be the correct sentence. Yes, please.
Yeah.
But that in back then, you would really have to source it out, and it was really, in the back of magazines, and like, just something that you would have to search for a little bit more than just walking down the street to EB. And so him going to the X and seeing this Atari system, and I remember it was like this big, and it was like a skinny stand up, and it was a long skinny screen, and they actually gave you like little plexiglass filters to change the color of the screen because it was just black and white, like 2-bit, not even 16-bit. And you would play Asteroids, and I think Paperboy, and maybe like one other one. And he bought it all. And it was like $1 million. And my mother yelled at him because I was like a newborn, and she's like, what the hell is this? Because again, like her muggle and him wizard. And he's like, no, you don't understand. This is the future.
He was right.
He was right.
Yeah, totally right. Even with the screens, I love that.
Do you remember though? Like you would play certain games. Oh, and I'm like racking my brain about the very first ones that we had. Definitely not ET. ET was the worst. We gave that back right away.
Pac-Man?
Pac-Man was great, but there was one that it wasn't Asteroids, but it was like that. And you put the filter
Space Invaders.
Yes, Space Invaders. Thank you. And you pop it into there was no sleeve. You just kind of like smooshed it against the screen. And then the screen had like little helpful terrain built on it, like some kind of like D&D overlay, and it would help you play the game, because they didn't have the rendering back then to have textures on the screen. It was just lines and squares.
So this was like if it was a car game, the street would be on the screen.
It would be like the plexi thing. Yeah. So like to get through the
awesome.
level, like it was just really interesting how they were really trying, like they had the concept there, they just didn't have the technology just yet. And so that was me before I was really learning how to speak. I was playing games on the Commodore, and then I became a Sega Genesis baby, and because all of my friends had Nintendos, my dad was like, Sega, it's better all this other stuff, right? Like better resolution.
Did he have a Betamax as well?
He totally did.
Was there a Neo Geo just hanging out in the corner somewhere?
There's, I actually have like, I get the Commodore. I re-gave it to him, and we couldn't even make it play on the television. It's so old, right? Like you have to get all these different patches and stuff. So he's actually trying to make it work, because I remember him loving Dragon's Lair. That was like his favorite, because it was a story instead of just like button mash.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we kind of left video games to catch up to where we are today. And we started really heavy into board games. And my dad actually made a board game. He started making it, I think, when I was about 10 years old or so. And it's called Camelot, and it's a 4-way person chess with Arthurian mythology chance cards. So it's like so nerdy. 4-player chess to begin with. Like,
Dang.
how Spock is that?
Can I just cut in for a second here?
Yeah.
I'm actually wearing it's kind of like a board game shirt. Did you guys ever watch the show Parks and Recreation?
Oh yeah.
Little Tones of Dunshire over here.
Nice.
One of my favorite. Did they actually make it into a real game? But like, even if they did it, best fake game ever, and
Yeah.
such a great spoof too of Settlers, I guess, right?
Totally, and like Carcassonne and stuff.
I loved Parks and Rec.
I love that show so much, man.
Yeah.
Those characters are wonderful.
Nick Offerman was he was so funny. And my sister is Leslie Knope. Yeah. It's
Forever hopeful and just positive.
and just one of those people who can like, oh my God, it's midnight now. Everything has to be done by 5 a.m. Let's do it. And she'll just roll up her sleeves and get her done.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So anyway, little side mission there for us. Your dad's game, what was it called?
Camelot.
Do you have a copy of it?
I have 2 copies of it because he made me one that was for me, and I look like Merida from Disney Pixar's Brave. I am an archer. I know how to ride a horse. At one point in my life, I did have a horse in my life. So I am Merida, and I remember watching it in theaters, and my stepmother, she turned to me in the opening and she's like, oh my God, it's you. It's you. That's you as a child. And so he made a whole Camelot version of like Queen Merida and took pictures of me in like my period gown and my archery stuff and like put it all over the board so that it's like my version. And it's so adorable.
Like, is it like it folds out and there's pieces and cards and like everything? Like, I would love to just check it out.
Would you say your relationship with your dad, because he was like loved video games before they were video games, and because he encouraged this side of you, how did that mold your development, if you will, into like the person right now who has, Fraggles and Back to the Future and, Grogu and a lightsaber behind her, amongst other things? Yeah.
Made it a galaxy edge. So my stepfather, because the Muggle and the Wizard didn't work out.
Okay.
My stepfather introduced me to even more nerd stuff and was really supportive. So my stepfather, Marty, again, along with my Muggle mom, who was totally into Disney and my imagination and really supportive that way, he introduced me to WrestleMania and Macho Man Randy Savage. He would take my Roger Rabbit doll and I would come home from school and Roger would be in an adventure that I would have to find him. Like he would be missing. And so like, I had these really imaginative, supportive parents around me. And then, my baby brothers were born and they were loving Star Wars more than anything. And so I just kind of had a real team of nerds around me of different flavors, right? Like I say that my mom's a Muggle because, she just really was, a Disney princess at heart. But there was no shame. I was never shamed from my family to love Muppets, to watch Back to the Future until the VHS broke. Like the tape broke, guys. Like I couldn't watch it anymore. And that, memorizing the choreography in the Chipmunk Adventure because, I wanted to be one of the Chipettes or whatever. It was whatever I wanted to do to express that joy was fostered and allowed to happen. Like I never had to hide my geekdom. And my mom bought me Archie comics all the time at like, the grocery stand. They would be right there near the checkout and it'd be like $1. Yep. I was always getting Archie comics. And so all of the family unit while I'm growing up is like, yes, be your nerddom, be your geek. Like, what do you want to lean into? What do you want to play with next? And I think that that's a real gift and a real joy that I am seeing my other, like my friends around me being the geek parent and being the open door and the capacity and holding of space for their children. And I get to be crazy Aunt Adri. That's like, do you need a wand for your birthday? And like, shall I send you an owl? And like, just being that source of encouragement is now a pay it forward kind of moment. And I really, really like being a part of that joy for other people as well. And I think that's why as an adult, even if I find, Gamergate and Ghost Bros raining on my parade and, giving me a sore stomach because I'm dealing with them on the internet, it all of the joy really outweighs that. And that's why I have rainbow walls full of all of these geeky things, because I just want to tap into that joy and tell other people it's okay for them to be joyful about silly, wonderful things.
Isn't it amazing that there's some people out there who are like, you're not enjoying this the right way?
I know. Oh my God. Yeah. Who pissed
How
in your
dare you
Cheerios?
enjoy a movie where James Bond is blonde?
Yeah, it's just amazing how people can't just share in, just share it. Just listen to the other person for a little bit,
Yeah.
You don't always have to be the person talking all the time, like somebody else has a story to tell. Let's all listen and just take that in for a little bit, right? So
Worst case scenario, you disagree entirely. I'm sorry, I can't get over Batman killing that guy. Great. You want to go have a sandwich? Yeah. That's
I'm kind of hungry. Could go for a hoagie.
boom. That's as mean as it should get.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to gate and to police
When you say
how
gate,
much
gate, what do you mean by that?
barrier that they
Okay.
that there's these two really angry dudes, because I'm sorry, it's usually dudes that are in front of that fandom, whatever that image of the fandom, and they're like, hark ye, you must answer these 25 questions to make sure that you're a real nerd, so
Yeah.
that you may proceed, so that you can then finally put on a comment on this, Reddit board or whatever like this. And it's like,
Right.
no. I remember being called out in front of a downtown, at King and Bathurst, at one of these bars, and my friend who's a smoker, she's like, do you want to come outside with me? And I'm hanging outside, and then these two guys are starting to chatter up, whatever, cool, and I'm wearing a Batman shirt, right, or something, and they're just like, who's your favorite Robin? And I'm like, I don't know, man, right? Like that kind of putting competition and defensive and
Right.
putting me to the test. And it's like, dude, can I just not wear a shirt?
Right.
And also, you don't, to be a nerd and to like something, you don't need to be an encyclopedia for that thing. You can just like it.
Yeah.
And I'm just really tired of it.
I feel you on that one too, because I know some of the groups that I'm in, on the net, if you get one thing wrong, then it becomes this barrage of just
Shame.
Yeah,
Yes.
shame,
Yeah.
and it's just and I just kind of give up. It's I'm not even interested in this line of conversation. It kind of ruins it. You know what I mean? It just kind of ruins it.
Doesn't kind of ruin it. It totally ruins it. Because you can have a great conversation. I mean, to take your example, who's your favorite Robin? Now, especially when you pose the question like that, that's such a, who is your favorite? There's no wrong answer to that. Who was the best Robin? Well, I mean, it's Dick Grayson, but I mean, it's such a, who just enjoy the conversation.
At the end of the day, does it really matter?
No, it doesn't, because I still have to pay my taxes for last year. And the fact that, I think Damian Wayne is amazing doesn't help at all.
Well, and
it's not
that's
like
the thing.
Revenue Canada is gonna be like, I'm sorry, did you say Jason Todd? You have to pay everything today. So,
Yeah. And now
I just dropped the name of 3 Robins, by the way.
Caroline Keene
Sorry.
Kelly is my favorite.
We're side questing. We are totally side questing. Look what I
Right?
did. See, this is
But
what Merz Nerds is all about for anyone watching.
Yeah.
I just want to say, I know some about Batman. It's not my go-to thing, but I mean Chris O'Donnell, as Robin.
Those nipples.
I think he had the nipples too, right? I know that George Clooney had the nipples, but I think O'Donnell also had and the cod pieces in that one. Just spot on.
That's an
No
entire podcast just about that movie.
Yeah, it is.
Oh dear.
Okay, so you had not only one, but it sounds like 2 great positive, influential people bringing you up, raising you, who totally encourage 3, because your mom And I suppose your stepmom too, because she was like, "You're Merida." So four. You had four positive influences, really encouraging you to be you. Did you have to go through a period in, like, say, high school when the girls were like, what are you doing?
Well, I was always the alt kid, I was the nerd. I was the drama kid, which is even nerdier than normal nerds. So I think I've always just really leaned into I'm other.
Right.
I'm not main path. I'm not typical. Because nobody's normal, but I'm not typical. And that was fine. Like I don't know, like thinking of it, I didn't really have a John Hughes kind of high school experience. I think a lot of people go back and they like have stars in their eyes about being young and in high school, and I wouldn't go back there for all the money in the world. But things like, again, like university, where you go where you want to be, and the people who are there are curated because they also want to be there, seem to me to be more akin to that ideal of like being a geek and leaning into what you love and being unabashed and like just shout it out to the world. Like you have to declare your major. So I really enjoyed my university experience, and there I was completely nerdy, and just got to explore storytelling, because that's really what a lot of the nerd stuff that I'm into is based in, is like just really good storytelling, and different mediums for it. Like I love puppets, I love sci-fi, I love long form, short form, comedy. It's just, I think that's what got me to where I was at that point. Was thinking that, oh, if I like those sorts of things, then I need to be an actor. And about, I don't know, maybe about 5-6 years ago, I realized that you don't, like that wasn't the story for me. The story is that I started calling myself a storyteller instead of an actor, instead of a playwright, instead of like all of these, what I then understood to be a part of the puzzle of, no, I'm a storyteller.
With all these things that have led you up into now, what is it that you do now? In terms of like all the things that you've brought along the way, like what is I don't want to call it like a profession, maybe it is, what's the gamut of things you do in your professional life, I guess?
It is a gamut. It's definitely a wearing of multiple hats. The gig economy has made my trajectory very interesting. That I was a professional actor. That's how Tyler and I met.
Yep.
And then a very sad circumstance happened in my life. I lost my brother to suicide, and my world turned upside down, and everything was different on the other side of that grief. And it still is. And so I was still really married to telling stories and understanding stories and what is the word? Amplifying good stories. So I actually fell into social media marketing, where the internet and social media platforms became a different kind of stage. It became a digital stage. And I started to have people come to me for advice. And then all of a sudden I was a professor at Centennial College teaching social media to arts management and museum programs, where, it has to be about the experience. So it's always about telling stories, I find. And then all of that also in the background of the past 10 years was also dealing with grief and facilitating other people's conversations around death and mourning and suicide prevention and loss, that I was also accumulating all of these stories, all of these different ways and mechanisms to cope with grief and loss and bereavement, that I wrote a one-woman show that I toured. I started taking certification in suicide prevention training, grief literacy, and right now I'm currently studying to be a death doula, which is an end-of-life caregiver. And it's been a completely different track, and yet oddly complementary. And I feel like things have really Tetrised for me. This is my therapy moment. Thank you. I'll bill you later.
Sure.
But that I really feel like things have Tetrised in the past year. And the silver lining of such a terrible, awful, no good thing as the pandemic is that everything that I was doing had to be put on pause because the entertainment industry is on pause. So all of my contracts just went up in smoke, that I had time to really ask myself, and I hope others do too, what gets you up in the morning? You know, what gets you out of bed? And for me, it was still telling stories, but then it started to shift into listening to other people's stories and collecting their stories and sharing their stories in a way that is actually about mental wellness and wholeness, that I can help somebody who is near the end of their life. A near and dear geek to me is my friend Roberta, who I met at the museums, that last year for the last few months of her life, she had stage 4 cancer. She's like, yo, bitch, we're going to Disneyland. And I was like, what? Okay. Like that's where Galaxy Edge lightsaber comes from, because she's just like, okay, so I've got how much long to live? I'm not doing it in a hospital. We're going to Disneyland. We're going to do bucket list. And being there and being her support and going through that journey with her was like, it blew more hinges off of, my ship, my life, that I didn't even know had the capacity to do that. And so I find myself wanting to honor her and what she made me experience by, death and dying and Disney. There you go. There's the next show.
There's a title. Wow.
the next one woman show.
You got to write that one. Death and Dying in Disney.
Right. And again, that she wanted, again, speaking about the joys of geekdom, that she in her final days was like, this is where I want to be. Like, I want to be surrounded by joy and the things that remind me of how I've lived my life and how wonderfully fun, right? Like going to Disney is just like, I don't know, you get a little rush of like glee just saying it. Mm. So that was a really cool thing to do with her. And a real gift that in retrospect, I've learned a lot from it. And so the too long didn't read of that, Dan, is I am a storyteller, but also an appreciative, like I appreciate a good story. And that sounds, to me, is like the life story of people.
It sounds you're a story collector.
Yeah.
Your story is it's a hell of a story.
It's a hell of a story. It definitely didn't end up on the Stratford Festival stage with me playing Elizabeth Rex with this hair. Come on.
Was that the goal?
Great was the goal. Was that
Say that again, Dan?
We've got this great new title. So, just
yeah.
Right.
So yeah, I don't want to get stuck in the yesterdays and the coulda, shoulda, wouldas. This is where I am. This is who I am, and to go along with that geek sentiment of like, just lean into it, like lean into the things that get you out of bed, that make you happy. And it can change, right? Like the things that you loved 10 years ago might not be the thing that you love today. And that's okay.
Yep.
What great credentials to be an expert nerd, right?
100%. Like, this is why I refer to Adrianna as the queen of Merz Nerds. And my wife's not offended. She's like, yeah, let her have it. She can sit on that throne. But
we can be like Narnia. There's so many queens there.
Well, there you go. I've never read those. I need to read those.
Watch the BBC versions. They're crazy weird.
I haven't seen the movie because I figured, I've got a 9-year-old, so I want to read them with him.
That's cool.
What we've all experienced, especially this past year, is there's a lot of downtime.
Mm-hmm.
But talk about your downtime, because your partner is also a giant nerd.
Super huge nerd who's actually getting himself a drink, and you can hear him getting some ice right now. Hi.
Make it a double, Jason. Make it a double.
Make it a double, he says.
Are you still a gamer?
I am still a gamer, but it's been difficult. The pandemic does weird things to your brain. It is, people are calling it the pandemic brain, and it is actually a grief and bereavement brain, because we're in anticipatory grief. Going outside is a scary place. You can get COVID in the outside world, but staying inside is cutting you off from your supports and the mental health of not being able to hug people is a science fact. Like all of these things are chugging along in all of your synapses. So leaning into, again, like really coming back to that, leaning into what makes you happy is super, super important right now. So being like having the guilt of like, oh, I just keep just playing video games, that's all I can do, or all I want to do is watch Golden Girls because it's the best. I've rewatched TNG from the beginning, like all 7 seasons, 8 seasons. And
For any muggles watching that Star Trek The Next Generation.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And then I just need to find that comfort. And so for me, playing video games right now, unless it's something quite soft and easy like Animal Crossing New Horizons, I'm finding it very difficult. Like my partner I've been watching him play the new Miles Morales Spider-Man, and I think it's stunning and I can't wait to get into it. But I don't have it in me to have long story arc and then the fighting and stuff like that. Like there's just too many things for my brain right now.
Sure. Are you
and
reading anything? Are you watching anything? Or
I've been doing audiobooks because reading, I keep repeating the same sentence. Like it's very difficult for me to get past one page of reading. So I've turned to audiobooks and going for walks. And that's how I get my cardio and not the pandemic pudge. And so like listening to Howl's Moving Castle or, Harry Potter for however many times. And like just going back to things that I haven't read in a really long time. Stardust. Oh my God, Neil Gaiman and his voice, like he reads all of his books on audiobooks. It's
nice when you can get the author reading for it, because you're getting the legitimate.
They know, right? Yeah, they know the
their
nuance of it.
Their story, because you're a collector.
I am a collector. So listening to that is good.
So one of the things that I was doing, and this was inspired, again, this whole thing would not have happened. We would not have been doing this podcast had Dan and I not been texting one night after watching the first episode of WandaVision.
Wonderful WandaVision.
Oh, so good, but so weird. I assume that you've been watching that.
I have been obsessively watching it.
Okay.
I love it.
You are, you said before when you were in university and talking about being a geek, you didn't have to declare your geek major, but I've always kind of considered you kind of like having a master's in Marvel.
I had, if the Ghost Bros hadn't come to me today, I would have been sitting here in my Captain Marvel shirt.
Right.
Because I agree. I think like I grew up with Spidey. Mary Jane Watson is my girl. Like I saw myself in comics, right?
Well, let's go to that major then, because since if this is about talking to the experts, right?
Okay.
I want to get into to WandaVision, because like I just recently restarted watching the Marvel universe in chronological order. So cool. I started with Captain America, the First Avenger, and I'm going to go in. Disney's got a whole thing of like different ways you can watch the MCU, and I'm doing that one. But then like I'm at WandaVision. That's kind of like if you're caught up, you're there, right? And because of Mers Nerds, I've been able to be like, what does this mean? And people have been telling me, but what were your impressions of it? Because it's so out there. And I think one of the beautiful things about Marvel is they've done this amazing job for the last 11, 12 years of world building. Now they can just start doing different stuff. And this is off the wall different. Tell me your feelings about WandaVision.
So it's a series that shouts from the rooftops its love of television storytelling. And I love it for that it is a love poem. It's a love song. It's like every different type of way of saying that they love television and how it comes into your living room and it becomes a part of your family dynamic to turn it on and see familiar faces. And throughout time, like that they actually go through time, starting with like the Dick Van Dyke Show and then the Brady Bunch. And now we're moving into more sitcoms. I love that they've given a framework that we all have a nostalgic feels for, so that we are immediately in the know and we feel safe and we feel home. And yet they've then put in these little Easter eggs and these moments where home is not right. There's something unsettling about this home. There's something unsettling about how there is a red helicopter. There's something unsettling about a random beekeeper coming out from underneath the streets. Something isn't right in our home.
The crazy symbol on the back of his jumpsuit, right? That beekeeper had that. What was that symbol? What could it possibly be?
Oh no, I don't know. I do.
Well, what is it?
Spoiler alerts.
We're at episode 3 right now.
So Wanda Maximoff is a fantastic witch, and she's the Scarlet Witch, and that she has so much power. And they've talked about this in the MCU, that she has yet to tap and understand just how much power she has. Vision was trying to help her understand that, and I think that's why she and him actually ends up, and they end up together in the comics as well, right? Like a lot of this is parallel, like it's just a little bit different than the comic book canon.
Doesn't Vision become white at some point in time because he comes back?
Like Gandalf?
I was just gonna say
He becomes, because he's dead, I guess, right? In the comic books, and then he comes back and he's a white Vision for a while and all that kind of stuff. So I guess I'm just saying, like, yeah, it's nice to see them just, pull together the things that need to be pulled together for the MCU, right?
And it's like the same thing where if you have this wealth of canon material and you have millions of fans that are in the know and waiting and watching with bated breath of like how you're going to adapt things, I think WandaVision is doing the exact same good job as the people over at Mandalorian, right? There's so many things that people have been watching, reading, playing, like there's so many things in that franchise, same with MCU, that you have this wealth to draw upon. Why reinvent the wheel when the payoff with nostalgia and long-term, like long-form storytelling is so good? Much like how when Wanda and Vision, they like the sprinklers go off and like everything is happening and they do that weird stance. That's actually one of their quintessential reads in the comic book, that they are the actual front cover art to Vision and Wanda. Like they actually had their own standalone comic book for a really long time. And so for the casual viewer, seeing this as a secondary or a tertiary character is fine. That's absolutely fine. But there is a wealth of storylines and arcs and crossovers, like the fact that the doctor that's supposed to give birth to Tommy and Billy, because that happens in the comics, is supposed to be Doctor Strange. And the fact that it's called Stan Nielsen, is a little hat tip maybe to Stan Lee, and also the Nielsen TV ratings, because it's all happening in the different types of television shows. So it's like a little, and like little things like that if
Dan
you're
just had
there
a
for it.
moment.
I did. I was like, wow, that is, because I love Easter eggs, right? I don't get them all. I get some of them, and when I do, it's like, oh, that's wicked. And that was, again, one of the reasons why I got so excited about Wanda and Call Tyler, because like this is really like blowing my mind. Yeah. I love the Dick Van Dyke gag right at the beginning where he walks through the chair as opposed to tripping over it, right? Like that made me laugh. I had a good laugh at that one.
And it's stuff like that we have not really been able to take advantage of in the way that televised stories are consumed. We can now binge things. We can now rewatch things ad nauseum. We can go back and stop and like do like the freeze frames and stuff like that. And I think that that's something that a lot of audiences now take for granted, like that these Easter eggs, but Easter eggs are a fairly new thing because you do have to go hunting for them, like the whole Ready Player One thing, that you have to go back and you have to go back and you have to see. And also there has to be the forethought of the storytellers, like the directors, the writers, the producers, to all agree that that is an actual asset to have in the story, that it won't derail, won't take away, that it is this little nugget of extra. Because for people who are walking into it cold, if muggles are just like, I like Spider-Man, then they still have to get it. So those Easter eggs have to be well thought out. Mm-hmm. And I think that they're doing it in a way that nobody else has. Like Disney has the money, has the infrastructure, and they've set themselves up with Marvel with this decades long canon and wealth of character development that now these Easter eggs are, even for the so-called casual viewer, because they've set up the casual viewer to be an expert at this point because you've watched all of these movies.
That's a really good point, because I mean, I'm not, I am now, but I was never a Marvel guy. You know, I like Spider-Man, but you know, rewatching these movies, you know, watching the MCU, and I'm watching it again because I want to get back to WandaVision. I want to see the things that I've missed. You know, I saw Thor: The Dark World for the first time last night since I saw it in the cinema, and I remember not liking it in the cinema, and last night being like, "Well, that was a good movie." You know what I mean? But you're so right in the fact that they've really made you love these characters. You know, without giving any spoilers away, I watched Endgame like this for 3 hours, and the only time I closed my eyes was to empty them from tears and then start watching again. And unabashedly surrounded by nerds, some of the MERS nerds right now, who, you know, the only thing they would say if they turned was to, "Do you want a tissue?" You know, grown ass men, and I love that. I love that. That's our people. You know?
Exactly.
Well, and Dan, you know, when we were watching WandaVision the other night, and you know, because it was funny, it was Dick Van Dyke, and then the next episode with the Bewitched, right?
Yeah.
And it was light and it was fun, and like watching it with my wife, who has maybe seen a couple of the MCU movies, because she had to at the time. Just not her bag. That's totally fine.
Yeah.
But she was like, "Well, that was, you know, kind of a fun, weird homage to old sitcoms." And then I get this text from Dan, and remember what you said? You're like, "That it's so sad."
I'm trying to. Sorry, Tyler. I'm like, what part of the second WandaVision we've talked about here?
No, just like the 2 episodes altogether, like just what Wanda is clearly going through.
Yes. Sorry. Yeah. No. I totally. Yeah. Because like you feel the sadness when she starts to crack, and like you can see when she's like, something's not really right here, and like her spell, I guess, is starting to crack, and she's starting to realize that, and you know, like again, Vision's dead, right? And you know, you can see that she who's the actress that plays Wanda again?
Elizabeth Olsen.
I think she does a great job.
I think she's fantastic.
100% believe her, like the whole time. Her and the guy that plays, oh man, I'm so bad with names.
Paul Bettany.
So here's my question about that. That begs the you know, talking about Elizabeth Olsen's performance. If you go back to was it Civil War that she
Age of Ultron
was when we first saw her, right? What happened to her accent?
I know. A little bit of Princess Leia action there, huh?
It's not as bad as like Princess Leia, or because that was one movie when she was like, "Oh, that no," but or like Storm in the X-Men movies when, you know, like all of a sudden there's a sequel, and I was like, "No, I don't have an accent anymore." But I mean, I believe that she's been in the States long enough that she's kind of lost it, but I loved it so much. She made a reference, the one thing that kind of bumped me. Here I am picking it apart. She's talking about good old wholesome Americana or whatever it was. Then I'm like, well, aren't you Eastern European? Yeah. Like, how is this all in your frame of reference?
Yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't even tapped into that until just now, about the idea that this isn't her home. This is American home. And we're
reminded who she is because she sings the lullaby in her own language in Sokovian. Right. So there's just so, and these are things that I'm pretty sure, like we talk about those deep, well hidden Easter eggs. The filmmakers know this. They know these things. Like, is it going to be addressed? Like, the accent's not a big deal. She's been.
And if she can create universes, she can nullify her accent. I'm fine with it.
Okay. You know what? There it is. You answered.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. So.
If she can make a pocket universe to deal with her grief, she can learn an American accent like that.
This is why you're an expert. Yeah. You know, we could go on and on and on about all this, and we've touched on so much. Adrianna, will you do me a favor? I don't want you to promise anything, but could you promise to be a guest on MERS Nerds again?
I would love that. I love nerding with you guys.
Dan, do you have any closing thoughts?
Closing thoughts? You know what? I am so damn tired that I have nothing. I got nothing at the moment. So I'm
Right.
I enjoyed listening to Adrianna for sure. I mean, that was just lovely. And I'm just getting to know you. Tyler's known you for so long, and
Over 10 years now.
there you go. And I think this is the second time we've ever talked. So it's just great to get to know you while drinking some Egyptian licorice tea. So.
Amazing.
And that's kind of the point of Mers Nerds. Nerds getting to know each other, not just the nerdy stuff we love, but the person. And yeah, you are pretty amazing. So let's cue the music. There's that Dan wrote. Dan wrote this music. That you
Muppet Arms of Excitement. Thanks, guys.
There you are. And we will speak with you very, very soon.
Okay. Yay.
Wait, 1, 2.
It's ridiculous. Oh, I love it.
It's our slate.
Yeah.
Okay, so we just said goodbye to Adrianna, and she's fascinating, isn't she?
Oh, man, that was great. It's so great to just listen to somebody that has such a wonderful storied, and as you said, she collects stories, and just listen. Just listen, and I was amazed the whole time, because it's there's things that I do, I got things that I like, but that is awesome.
Yeah.
So, and I was just amazed. So
she's a fascinating human, and so nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. She, I really, I love her a lot, and I hope that she will make good on her promise, and that she'll come back and be a regular guest. Otherwise she's just a liar.
You've got her email.
Yeah, 100% I've got her email. I didn't mention to her, she dropped the second cuss of the, she owes us $1 for the pizza jar.
Nice. That's going to be good.
Adrianna, you owe us $1.
Be a good pizza.
Yeah.
It'll be a good.
So she dropped a B word. So this is still pretty new to us, Dan. That was the first time we had a guest. What would you say, what have we learned?
What did we learn? I feel like I learned that it's the dynamic between 2 people talking and 3 people talking, especially online, is much different.
Yep.
And being privy.
It should be noted that just before we started hitting record, the 3 of us were on screen, and because I had edited the first episode, and I was like, Dan, we just need to be careful. We can't talk over each other, because one of the mics will blip out. And in the first episode, Dan's mic overpowered mine, so I would blip out, and a little bit of creative editing.
Yeah.
And I think I messed with your head a little bit.
Just a little bit, because I was afraid to I was afraid to jump in, because I thought it was gonna duck the audio and cut the audio. I'm like, oh my God, I can't ruin this.
And I just thought you were tired, because I was like, well, Dan's not saying much, but he was up early this morning.
Well, I mean, I was also, I'm also tired, and I think it shows a couple of times, because I wanted to say something, and then it just went poof, and just flew away. But
Maxima culpa. This is why actors don't give each other's notes, and you especially don't give someone a note just before you're about to go on.
It's a technical note, but it's fine. It's fine. It's just what it was. And, this, we've learned from this. This is a learning experience. So
yeah.
So next time I'm not going to shut up.
Oh, you're the guest expert? Well, let me tell you what I think.
Complete opposite of that previous conversation. Just
right.
Oh dear. So how about you? What did you, any notes on your side? Anything?
Big thing I learned that, the nerd subjects that we want to talk about they're fascinating, and that's what kind of brings us all together. But getting to know the people is really, I kind of want to know more about the nerds than what they're nerdy about sometimes.
Yeah, totally. Or just a nice mix of both of those things, because, I love learning about the stories, and Adrianna's story is just, like I said, captivating. But I also want to talk shop with these people as well.
Yeah.
Because that's also super fun.
Yeah, 100%. Well, there you are, episode 2. I think we've learned some.
I think we learned a little bit. Episode 2, that's how you do.
Yeah, and here we are with our first post-credit scene.
There it is.
Yeah.
Watch to the end of the credits, people.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Have a great night.
Peace.